What can I say? I'm Nina motherfucking Blanco. Welcome to the Nina Blanco podcast. We are on episode 4. This is a special episode because it's going to be a little bit different. And I have a guest with me, Bex from the podcast Tu Tia Bruja. She is one of my friends. We've been friends for quite some time now, which is a little weird to think about. But we met early in our radio careers in St. Louis. And she is going to be joining me on the podcast today because we are going to talk about the Britney Spears book, The Woman in Me. And I'm so excited. Hi, Bex.
Hey, Nina. Thank you for having me on to talk all things Britney.
Yes. So I immediately, you were obviously my first choice when I first thought oh, maybe I should do a podcast about the Britney book, because we had talked about it before the book came out. You had actually helped convince me because I'm I'm not a reader. I don't read books. As embarrassing as that is, I don't know. Anytime I try to sit down and read a book, it just takes me ever. I knew I wanted to read everything in this. And I knew that as big of a fan as I was just growing up with Britney through my entire lifetime, basically, I knew that you vibed with that just as well. So I wanted to have you on to talk about the Britney book because you helped me get on Audible and listen to it there. And so listening to the book was a different experience. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed it because I'm not much of an audiobook kind of person. But now, because of you, I feel like I might be an audiobook kind of person.
Oh my gosh, I love that I converted you, first of all. But I'm with you. I love books, and they used to be my way of self-soothing when I was a kid, but I just don't have the attention span anymore.
No, that's how I feel. It's there's too much ADD, there's too much going on. I don't got time for that shit. Who has the time to sit down for hours and read a book? As bad as it sounds, but you can't do anything else when you're reading a book, you can't multitask. You have to just sit there and be reading the book.
I'm glad that there are people in the world that have not been impacted by social media and just living in a world where everything is so instant gratification. Good for y'all. But for the rest of us, audiobooks are great because you can still get that. And can I just say that Michelle Williams brought Oscar level audiobook, she was so good.
She was so good. She was so good. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the Britney book. Thank you, Michelle Williams, for doing what she did because she really brought it to life. I was a little not upset, but just a little let down at first when I found out that Britney was not going to be narrating the book, but it absolutely made sense because she did a little blurb in the beginning of the audiobook and she dedicated it to her sons. And she also said, I'm not going to be doing this because as painful and traumatizing as it was to revisit all these different points in my life, reading it out loud and having that recorded, she just didn't want to do that. And I completely understand.
I heard this rumor too, that the reason that Michelle Williams was specifically selected is because Heath Ledger had said in a different life, him and Britney could have been together and he would have treated her right. And it's a beautiful way of bringing it all full circle, I think.
Wow. Interesting. I didn't know that. Where did you read that at?
It was in a magazine. I'll have to find it and send you the article. But ever since then, I've just been oh, I hope that's true because that just makes it a lot more sweet. And also just can you imagine an alternate reality where Heath Ledger and Britney got to be together? That just seems really nice.
It does. It does. Seems nice and actually really hot and steamy. I could see that. Absolutely.
Love that for
them. So we had talked a little bit before we started up the podcast this round anyway, because you've been on my podcast, I think every season so far, which I love that. And I've been on your podcast as well. Why don't you go ahead and pimp out your podcast real quick for me?
Yeah. So Tu Tia Bruja, if you haven't checked it out, is a podcast that talks about magic and shadow work and just all of those interests that we had when we were a kid that were a little morbid. So whether it was, primer impacto, kind of normalizing, people die all the time, but there's also magic, right? That's sort of what the podcast is about. And, I feel this book is a lot of shadow work. It's her kind of digging into herself and really telling us. And something that I really did about her book, and I'm sorry, I'm like all over the place, like talk about me, talk about her podcast,
No,
but
it's all
like
good.
the thing that I really liked is everything was very intentional
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I was like, you really thought about how you were going to present your voice to the world after so long. And I think that that's beautiful, to be able to reclaim your voice, because that's what my podcast is all about, is like finding power in the things that used to like embarrass us or humiliate us, or that like at the time we couldn't really make sense of, and it needed to be years, a lifetime to really figure out who we are.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very well said. So, we talked about a little bit how we wanted to format this book or format this podcast about the Britney book. And so, let's just talk a little bit, I guess, about why we're interested in Britney, like I guess our experience and why Britney is maybe important to us. Because for me, like I said, I mean, yesterday I've been reading this book. Yes, Britney has been on my mind for sure. And then I was just thinking back throughout these different chapters of the book. She kind of obviously went through her whole life and her whole career and the timeline of everything and these different events that came up, and you remember it. And then it kind of like placed me back in time of where was I when she was going through this. I remember that news story, the age I was at, my mindset on what was going on with Britney at all these different stages of her life. And yesterday, the day before recording this podcast, we were just kind of doing some housework, the boy and I. It's been over the weekend. And I was like, we're listening to Britney today. Sorry. And he's like, okay. And so I put on Britney Spears on all the speakers in my house and was just blasting it all day. And I'm like, hit after hit after hit. I'm like, these bangers though. I'm like, this is amazing. And just like, I remember that song, and it was on shuffle. So it was all over the place, by no means in order throughout her career. It was literally just all over the place. But I had so many flashback memories of being like in middle school and singing. And I was lucky in her song. And and all these memories came back for me from being in my elementary and middle school years to when my cousin, the first time I heard about Britney Spears, my cousin had gotten her first CD with Baby and everything like that. And I was like, who's this Britney girl? Like, it's all right. And then that just morphing into what she was. And then all the way up into like college days and all of these things that she's doing, all these hit songs. I remember wanting so bad to go to Vegas and to go see her when she was in Vegas, and she was in Vegas for a long time, but I was like a broke college kid. No way that was going to happen for me. But hearing her songs brought me back to different eras in my own life. And I'm like, damn, Britney was a part of all of that. She's a huge influence on me. So I feel like a lot of people kind of feel that way as well. I'm assuming for you too. Have you experienced that at all?
Oh, dude, it's funny because I've been really thinking back about like where I fell in love with Britney Spears. And it's funny because I was really into the Spice Girls, and in 98 I went to their concert, and I have this very vivid memory of me being like over the moon with the Spice Girls still, and someone, also fuck you, you know who you are, being like, we have moved on to Britney Spears now. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I was always a kid who had like music, and I was always listening to music. So I would have my like CD player, my portable CD player. And so I bought the Baby album and I listened to it, and I was like hooked automatically. And I have memory. It's funny because like you said, you have had all these memories come to you.
Yeah.
I was cooking, and I remember that I had like a teen magazine because I was 8 when the single first dropped. So like the album came out in 99. I was 9 years old, and I remember having this magazine that had a bunch of Britney photos in it.
Yeah.
And I remember that was one of the days the older kids were nice to me, which in hindsight I was like, you're trying to get one of these photos to like,
Oh, they just
okay,
wanted
I
to
get
check it
it. I get it.
out.
You get it. We get it. But like he was really nice to me, and he was like, can I have one of those photos? And I was like, why? And like listen to me talked about something probably for like 10 to 20 minutes so that he could get his photo. But yeah, I don't know, it was really cool because she was a little like 10 years older than us. I think she's about 10 years older than
Yeah.
us, and she was just this embodiment of what it was to be like young and beautiful and talented, and she was just on top of the world. And I have so much like sadness for her and empathy because it's like her life just took off, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it was a nonstop thing.
Mm-hmm.
And also I was really into her for a while. Around 2003 I think is where I started to fall off which I think, what album was that? Was In the Zone, maybe, I think was the one that was released in '03. But around that time, I think after that album, I kind of started to fall off a little bit. And then I came back around in 2009 because I was like working in radio and stuff. And in 2011, she released like another album. And I was on like a pop station at the time. So you're right. Like there were all these different eras of my life where Britney was with me, even if I didn't, I
Didn't
don't know,
realize
realize
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, it's so sad because she has so many bangers. And it's
Hmm.
also like this moment of like, I just didn't realize that some of the songs that I especially like after 2008, the conservatorship, it's like, wow, we're really like praising The Prisoner, for like creating this thing that we are now like enjoying. And I don't know, it kind of makes me sad. Also, I realized I went through all of her albums after 2013, when she released Scream and Shout with will.i.am, I think is kind of when I personally fell off. I was
Really?
like, I mean, like, she makes really great music, but it was almost like I felt like she wasn't in it
Yeah.
completely or something. It felt, and for the timelines, getting the insight that we have now, I'm like, it makes sense.
There was a lot of negativity after that time just surrounding her in general. And so I will be the first to admit, like, it definitely skewed my perspective a little bit. It's like you hear all these people talking about it and people say it enough, you'll believe it eventually, which is just the sad truth. And you should always try to open your eyes a little bit more and not be that person. But I was definitely fell into it too. And I fell into that narrative that everyone was kind of pushing of she's losing it and it's Britney's not cool anymore. And like, she's just throwing songs out there to throw them out there, or like you just pay no attention because she's just doing her Vegas thing or whatever after that time. And so, again, with just all the negativity and everything like that, and that was kind of being pushed. I mean, I was just like, oh yeah, Britney, whatever. Like Britney who? Like, what do you mean? We're still talking about Britney. You know what I mean? And it was just that era, that moment there. But yeah, it's just you think back at it for us being like 90s babies, and she was just all over the place. She was through our entire lives, and even still to this day, obviously, just impacting us as millennial Mexican American kids.
Yeah. And it's interesting. One thing I want to kind of touch on before we like jump into the book is like the Free Britney movement, because
Yeah.
the only reason that this book exists, the only reason that she is free from her conservatorship is because her fans really were paying attention. Were
Yeah.
really noticing that something was wrong.
Truly.
And so for people who might not know, like the Free Britney movement was started by two fans, Tess Barker and Babs Gray, who started a podcast called Britney's Instagram, later called like Britney's Gram. Did you listen to it?
I had listened to like the first episode when it first came out, and when the Free Britney movement was first starting up, but no one was really paying attention to it unless you were into pop culture. And for my job and everything, like hell yeah, I'm into it. And I had a friend actually bring it up to me, and I was like, sure, I'll listen to it. And I think I listened to that very first episode, and that first episode was very chilling. I did not keep up with it afterwards, but that first episode did what it needed to do in bringing all this information out there. And we can talk about the voicemail and everything too, but it was all in that first episode, which is really all that I needed to know that, yeah, there is a problem, something is going on, and this Free Britney movement isn't coming out of nowhere. It is backed up by all this stuff. Listen to that episode.
Yeah, and I can pass along the links for you because so I believe the podcast that you're referring to is called Toxic: The Britney Spears Story. So this one came out of Britney's Gram because it took about 75 episodes into Britney's Gram for them to release hashtag Free Britney. It was their 75th
Oh,
episode. It was
okay.
released on April 16th. And so like people have known for April 16, 2009. So since 2009, people were like, something's up here. And the conservatorship started in 2008, and so it's wild that like people just didn't know how bad it was. And so Toxic, the Britney Spears story, is more of an investigative like dive into everything, and they
Okay.
like interview like the guy, her first husband that she married and it got annulled. Like
Yeah.
they really did their work to talk to a lot of people. But it's so interesting to me that this project, like the original one, started as like a goof, right? It's like pop culture. We're analyzing her like Instagram. What does this mean? And they were like analyzing on a level that was wild. And that voicemail that you referred to is sort of what set everything off, because up until that point, everything was speculation.
Right. Right. Most definitely. So the voicemail that we are talking about, so it was in one of those podcasts, but it was a voicemail from a former assistant or a former dancer, I believe, someone who was close-ish to Britney. And they basically were like, I'm keeping this anonymous and I'm spilling the beans because this, it's not right. This conservatorship, she is being pushed, like medicine, pills, going to doctors, getting all these wrong diagnoses, and someone just straight up was just waving all the red flags like, hello, there's something very wrong. I am close to this person. I'm staying anonymous, but I'm seeing this and it is wrong and it's not okay and she needs help.
So it was a paralegal that was actually working for the law firm that was handling the conservatorship. So even more chilling, because it's like, from a legal perspective, he is saying like, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, this is fucked up. And
there was Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say there's just so many people behind it that could have said something that could have stopped this a long time ago, but it's just chilling to know that, you know, if those people are not, I guess, technically being paid by you, they were being paid by Britney, but they were being paid by her father. He was writing the checks, you know? And so they were going by what he wanted, his agenda, what he wanted pushed and everything like that. And even these people who knew that it was wrong, they shut their mouths for money.
And Britney mentions like an instance in her book where like a hairdresser, I believe it was just like, oh, you know, this is not okay. Like, you deserve, and disappeared.
The next day it was gone.
So you really couldn't even say a whole lot in support of her because you were just like ripped off the team.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, which is so fucked. So let's start getting into the book. The way Britney wrote it was very timeline-esque. And let me just go through my life from a little girl to rising to fame, to being in the fame, to the conservatorship, to where she is now. Basically is, I think, like the gist of the timeline. Of course, there were so many things in between, and that's why we're going to dive into it. But that's kind of how she wrote the book. So let's kick off her child's life. And small town girl in Louisiana. Her father was an alcoholic. He's always had an issue with alcohol, and that's always been something that's been pretty big and significant in her life, I think, as well as the relationship that Britney had with her mother when she was a child. Britney was very much like, mom was her protector, I think. And I feel like she didn't go into major detail about how bad things were potentially when her dad got drunk. And I think that leaving out those details, it potentially kind of leaves out why she did feel the way she felt about certain things. But that is and can be very traumatizing. So that's okay that she didn't go into those details. But the fact is that her father was an alcoholic. Her mom was her protector. And Jamie Lynn really didn't come into her life until a little bit later. So let's talk about before Jamie Lynn, I guess, and Britney's relationship with her family.
I think the book does a really good job as she's introducing everybody. She also sets the stage for why Jamie later sets up the conservatorship, which kind of she's talking about in the beginning, because she mentions that her father, Jamie, his father, June, had not one, but two wives that were basically locked away for mental health conditions. Like Jean, who, you know, that's Britney's middle name, was locked up because she had a child that died. They put her on lithium and she ends up shooting herself.
Yeah.
And then again, Jamie sees this happen again with, I can't remember the second wife's name, but this has happened twice. Yeah. So as she's like you said, introducing like her family, her relationship with her mother, her father, she's also like kind of giving this insight that's like, this is going to be very important later, which is, I want to circle back to the fact that like, even though it's so short, it's very intentionful. Everything was put in there. I want to kind of expand on like the mother. Like, she's very protective of her mother, and she explains why, which is funny because some of the stories in this, because, you know, her mom and her sister released books before her, kind of seem like they're direct responses. And I'll talk more about that later. But like the first one is, she explains like when she was a little girl, so she was about 9, because Jamie Lynn is or a little bit younger than her, she talks about how she saw her like hemorrhaging blood and almost bleed out. And that makes sense because she's setting up even before that her father's abusive, he's drunk, he disappears, he's not consistent. You know, and she talks so much about how her mother is that pillar, that constant in her life. So if that's how it's been up until 9, of course she's going to be traumatized by the fact that she thinks that her, you know, the keeper of her normalized world, whatever that feels like in chaos, could potentially die. And it's funny because her mom later addresses it like, yeah, Britney would really freak out when she wouldn't see me. It's like, I wonder why, you know, I wonder why. And then like,
let's also talk about the fact that from the get, Britney was kind of pushed to be the show kid. And granted, like when you're a kid, you have to have the personality for that. You know, there are very, very shy kids who would just hide behind their mom's leg. There are very active, look at me kids, and they want to be center of the attention all the time. And Britney, granted, was the center of attention kind of person, but she was also pushed by her mom. I think they don't say explicitly, and I don't know if Lynn says in her book, Britney's mom, that she was a show mom or was definitely trying to push her kid to do that. But it's very much seems that way, that like Britney was a show kid. Absolutely. She was pushed into it. Granted, she liked it and she had fun, so it may not seem like pushed into it, but she was essentially pushed into it as a kid. Her mom encouraged that. They wanted that. They essentially a little bit groomed Britney to be a pop star, to be an entertainer of some sort, whatever that eventually worked out to be, and it just happened to be the world's biggest pop star. But yeah, she was definitely a show kid as well. And so I think because of that too, like dad is drunk and mean and we don't like him because he's drinking. But with mom, she takes me to dance class and I have a lot of fun at dance class, and I have fun with mom because she drives me there, and we go to the store and we're girly and we do girly things. You know what I mean? So I feel like that kind of pushes into that dynamic as well of like her mom, yeah, was her protector, but she was also like just this light a little bit in her life.
You know, it's interesting because not all kids that perform or dance or do dance classes or sing make it big. But I do feel like early on, the Spears parents were like, whoa, our kid has something.
Yeah.
Right? Because you watch, like, she talks about like Star Search and being on there. And like, when she was a little girl, she had a full-on woman's voice.
She did.
She just had this powerful voice. So it's also kind of like fucked up in a mockery to then see like, as she got older, they made her sing with a different voice, but whatever. But like she had this big voice. And so it's interesting because yeah, it just seemed like she was very shy and kind of like, I don't want to say meek, but very shy, and was like very like scared of the world for a lot of reasons. Like she also talks about like her brother's ATV accident and how he almost died, and she like shared a room with him because she was afraid that she could lose him. So like early on, she's showing you like, I just loved my family. I never wanted anything bad to happen to them. I was constantly worried about them. And it's like, of course you were. Like it was chaotic, you know, like you were always just worried that this could be taken from you. And I can't imagine how difficult that must be to know that you're so incredibly talented, but be like the star in a family that everything's on fire.
Yeah.
You know, like what the fuck?
Like constant, because her dad is losing all of their money. They're having money issues because of his alcoholism, essentially, and not being able to keep a job. I mean, a lot goes in with that. Her brother just being a dumb, dirty, stupid boy and making boy mistakes and going in a full body cast because he almost died in an ATV accident. But like, that's what boys do. and her mom was kind of her center, like I said, like her protector and everything like that. But yeah, it's very interesting, the dynamics in her early life with her family. And she also talks about her grandmother. Was it her mom's mother? Who was from England, and that's why she has the English accent that Britney likes to do, which when she was explaining the story, I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Like, thank you for explaining that. Like, not that she had to share that, but the fact that she did share that, because she's gotten a lot of criticism for going on Instagram and making these videos or whatever, and when she talks in like a British accent, and it stems from her grandmother on her mom's side that she used to be very close to when she was younger. And she adored her grandmother, and they spent a lot of time together. And she had that English accent because she was from overseas. And it just makes so much sense. After she mentioned that in the book, I was like, oh my gosh, eyes are open.
I was like, okay, so there's a reason for this. We love that. It was also, I feel like, a good indicator because Brittany, up to, like the point that she's in now, she's obviously gone through a lot of therapy, but she had a lot of examples of like women who were very like helpless or very stuck in their situations. So it kind of explains like where her mind was at, right? Because with Lily, her mom's mom, she talks about like how they met during World War II. She came back with him, and how it was very hard for her to be from like a big town, like a big city like London, and then be in like Kentwood, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And how her husband would not let her go back to England because he was worried she wouldn't come back.
Yeah, because she was miserable in fucking Louisiana. I don't blame her.
Like fucking nowhere, Louisiana. Like, of course she was. And so it's kind of just like, oh my God. And I don't know, because like this is something I talk about on my podcast a lot, is like generational trauma. And there's this thing called the mother wound. So your mom's mom, when she was pregnant with you, like she had all the eggs that would become you. So it's like, even though sometimes we are like, I wasn't alive for that, obviously, like we still feel that. It's in the blood. So she is literally explaining to you, like, this is why I felt so helpless. It's been so normalized. And that's just how it's been. Like a lot of women in my life, we just kind of like, all right, well, this is what I'm stuck in. This is what I have to do. So it's like, oh my God, it's so, this book, it's funny because people criticize it, and it's like, she's not fucking Tolkien, dude. She's Britney Spears, but it's like, she tells such a good story.
Yeah.
And it's so like, she really did set all these dominoes up to make you understand why it was the way that it was.
I think so too. It kind of gave me a lot of clarity to everything. It's just all of a sudden, all the dots were connecting, and I understood her a little bit more. And I even kind of understand where she's at currently. And we'll talk about that later too. But it just made me understand who she is a little bit more, and all of the choices that she did make, because there were a lot of bad choices for sure back in the day. And you ask yourself, why would the biggest pop star with so much power, with a strong voice, why would she just allow herself to be essentially run over time and time again? But after her talking it out and explaining things, like, I get it. I understand it a little bit more, at least. Is there anything in particular that you want to hit on with her family and her young life and everything like that before we kind of move into the next chapter of her life of starting to make it big?
Last thing I want to touch on is that, like, she was essentially a second mother to Jamie Lynn. And so I kind of think that also sets the stage for why her sister is so entitled in the way that she is, because she was like another parent. But we'll stop there, and then let's get into the next part.
Okay, so she talks about yes, when in her younger years, when she kind of knew that she was the entertainer, she embraced that. She liked singing, she liked performing, she went on Star Search, she did a couple of circuits and rounds in New York for Broadway and stuff like that, had gotten some parts. I had no idea. I didn't know any of this stuff about her, and she did, which is just so awesome. And she also talked about how when she was on Broadway, these schedules were pretty grueling, and being a young girl, she did struggle with that on and off, but it did prepare her eventually for her big break, which was her second time auditioning for the Mickey Mouse Club, the new one. And then that's the one where a lot of people were first familiar with Britney Spears, and they knew about her from that show. And so, of course, that links her with so many big names, and of course, Justin Timberlake. So let's talk about her joining Mickey Mouse Club, rising to fame when she was pretty young, still pretty naive, but also at the same time, a couple of years under her belt of like working and performing and doing the damn thing. And Mickey Mouse Club, and we do rehearsals all day, and it's a lot of work and it's grueling, but we get to go to Disney World and we all get to goof off. And she shares a dressing room with Christina Aguilera at that point too. And there's this really cute guy, because she is all about the boys, and she admits to that in the book pretty much her whole life, which, I mean, I was kind of like that. My cousin was really like that. She was always into boys. I'm talking like 8, 9 years old, when you're still like, maybe not, but she was all fucking for it. And so was Britney. Britney was all about the boys always. And so being a little bit older, joining Mickey Mouse Club and getting just kind of like a taste of fame in the entertainment industry. And then all of a sudden, Justin Timberlake is there and she really likes this boy and they share their first kiss in like a truth or dare situation. But she's kind of living the life. And I feel like for a lot of those 90s kids that like we are, like that was the dream, right? I feel like it was. I mean, I would have loved that.
He does a really good job of really telling us how it was this pivotal moment in her life. But the thing that I'm really upset is we didn't get a whole lot of stories other than like, yeah, like I kissed Justin Timberlake. Like one time she talks about like, because again, she was very boy crazy, which highly relate.
Yeah.
She talks about how her other crush, whose name is escaping me, came into her dressing room.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's one of those things that I really would like to know more, you know, about that time in her life. And maybe that'll be in her second book. Who knows? But
like, okay, notes for the second book, Brittany. I would really love more stories from that time. Maybe she's not able to because it has to do with Disney and they're so buttoned up. Like, I don't know. Disney's crazy, man. Disney is crazy. They will shut anyone the fuck up.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Like,
and a bunch of underage, horny kids. You know what I mean? That is not something that Disney, they don't like that part of it.
That's true. That's true. I do love that when you, like, you already touched on this, they kissed, her and Justin. The Janet Jackson song was playing. I was like, oh. And I was like, okay, because again, I'm a witch. I believe in divine timing. Everything happens when it's supposed to happen. And I'm just like,
so when Britney and Justin shared that first kiss, for those who haven't read the book, when they share their first kiss, then it's a truth or dare total situation, but there was literally a Janet Jackson song playing in the background. And Britney mentions that and remembers that. And like you said, things are very intentional. That was intentional. She did that shit on purpose. Just mentioning that, like, even if it was like, yes, that happened, but she's just remembering that. And then the whole Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson thing, she was like, yeah, I'm going to put that in the book.
I will say, because first of all, I've had issues with Justin Timberlake now for a while.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to talk my shit. And I'm just like so excited to do that. But do you remember a few years back ago, he had that like notes apology where he was just like, and sorry to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson.
Yeah, you just like threw it at the end. Like, oh, by the way, sorry to them too. Yeah.
It's like, wow. Yeah. Because let's jump into it. Because how did her and Justin reconnect? Because the Mickey Mouse Club ends. She talks about how she goes back to Louisiana for a little bit.
And then she starts her solo stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So when they reconnect it was after the Mickey Mouse Club. Britney's starting to do her solo stuff. She records Baby, and then Baby really launched her. She was doing the mall tours, which, by the way, I totally had been to a mall tour. I remember them. I went one time. I ditched school. I lied to my mom with my sister and told her I had bad period cramps and didn't go to school. And my sister took me to Spring Hill Mall in the Chicagoland area, and we saw Avril Lavigne. Watch out. He was a skater boy.
Oh my God, I love that.
She talks about after she released Baby and she really got it big, she went on this mall tour. And then after that mall tour, she blew up because then she released Oops. And the combination of Baby and Oops, I think, is what blew her up. And then after that, she reconnected with Justin Timberlake because he was in NSYNC. They were blowing up. They were going on tour, and Britney toured with them. She like opened for NSYNC.
Right.
Could you imagine going to a Britney Spears concert and fucking NSYNC concert? And that was my 90s dream. And I'm so mad at my mom because she was overprotective and a fucking psycho, and she wouldn't let me go to concerts. And oh my God.
See,
now I'm upset. Like,
first of all, have you ever seen Britney Spears live?
No.
Neither have I.
No. And I wanted so badly to see her in Vegas, and I never had the money. I couldn't go. I was a broke college kid.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, maybe one day she'll do like a tour.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, but no rush, and she can do whatever the fuck she wants to do, and I'm not going to ask her of it, but I'm hopeful.
she, oh my God, we'll talk about this later.
Okay,
But okay,
okay.
let's talk about Justin Timberlake.
So
So she's
that's
dating
how she and Justin
Timberlake.
Timberlake
Yeah.
kind of reconnected after Mickey Mouse Club. She opened for them and she was touring with them. So she was on their tour bus. She was with them city to city and everything like that. And she and Justin, yes, they had their connection and their first kiss, whatever. And it wasn't even her first kiss. Just kidding. She talks about that. But she reconnected with him because they were all blowing up and she was touring with fucking NSYNC. So she was hanging out with them.
You know what, though? It makes sense to why, because it's like you're on this tour together, you have this shared
Oh my
experience
God.
with Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse Club. Both of you are like on this tour that's like really changing your life. Like it makes sense.
Yeah. It
Right?
does. It does.
Oh my gosh. And like she just talks about how happy she was and like you could see it, dude. Like with all those like paparazzi photos and like, you know, that we got of them, like they seemed really happy.
They did. They did. And so after that tour is kind of when they most definitely rekindled things and were dating and they were hot and heavy. And Britney Spears is only gaining in popularity, as is Justin Timberlake with NSYNC. I think it wasn't until their breakup that Justin went solo. So it was still just the NSYNC fame. But again, with all the fucking 90s girls just being so boy crazy and like Britney Spears and being girly and she had a boyfriend and it's Justin Timberlake. And so a lot of people were crushing on Justin Timberlake and you would pick out your favorite NSYNC. Mine personally was JC Chazé. It was not Justin Timberlake, but
Boys. Mine was Lance Bass, and I think that says a lot about me.
nice.
Yeah.
I think it does. Everyone had their favorite, right? And they had the
Yeah.
Barbie dolls. And so like you can't necessarily collect them all. So if you can at least grab your favorite NSYNC member, then that's great, right? But yes, so they were hot and heavy, but they were so in love. And at that same time, like think about being like young and in love and you have everything. They had their own apartment. They were living together. They were just like doing life, you know, they were playing adults. They were playing adults is what it was. Granted, at this point, you know, they're in their teenage to 18, 19. I'm technically an adult type of situation and getting their own apartment and living together and just being so in love. But that's kind of where they were. And in all of that, she talks about points in her relationship with Justin where she does the all denim on denim, and no one really wanted to do it. And she kind of did it as a joke, but then they were like, wait, this might work and we're actually going to do it. And Justin kind of summed it up later in an article or in an interview that, oh yeah, you do stuff when you're young and in love. And he did the denim outfit for Britney because Britney kind of wanted to do it. And Justin didn't care that it looked stupid. So he just went ahead and did it because they were in love, but they were giddy, like in love and your first love and being so serious and then to have your heart broken the way her heart was broken by him. That's hard.
How did you feel about the bombshell in the book that like she ended up having a secret abortion that only Justin and Faye, who was her chaperone, knew about?
I don't know. I was not shocked. I wasn't after hearing that yes, this happened. And it happened so long ago, and it was this huge secret she's carried her entire life, and Justin has carried his entire life, and her and Fee, she all of them. I was like, it makes sense. And the fact that it did happen, I'm not shocked because when you are young and in love and having sex all the fucking time, like you're gonna get pregnant. Like even like it just happens. So because it happens and it is so common and that's just human nature and that's just what fucking happens. It didn't shock me that she had gotten pregnant from the get. And it didn't necessarily shock me that they had gotten abortion at all because think about where they were in their careers and who they were. And yeah, sure, the whole agenda of them being virgins and blah, blah, blah. And if you're a virgin and all of a sudden Britney's pregnant, wait a minute, you know, obviously there is that pressure too, but there's just so much pressure in her career, in her image, to parents. I mean, at that point, how old was she? 19?
I think so.
She was like 19. Even at 19 years old, what are you going to do? Tell your parents, hey, I'm pregnant? I mean, some people, yes, have to face that reality, but just being in the situation that they were in, you're going to try to figure it out. And so it doesn't shock me that it all happened. And granted, she talks about like, if it were up to Britney, she would have kept it and she never would have had an abortion, but Justin said he wasn't ready to be a father, and I'm sure brought up everything in their careers. Like, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't know. I don't want to say, like, because she was very open about, hey, if it was up to me, I would have just had the baby, and I do regret it. But at the same time, I also kind of think that Britney's mentality at that time too was, as much as I would like to have this baby with the man I love, we are 19. And in my brain, I thought Britney was thinking about it too. And as much as even if she didn't deep down want to, she also agreed to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel ya. And like obviously she was down with the choice because she did it. I think I was more upset because Justin pulled a fucking Ken.
I mean, the way it went down is absurd. And that part infuriates me, is how her experience with it. Not that it's supposed to be a great experience, but that was like a pretty bad fucking experience. It did not need to be like that.
No, and it's because her and I think that this is like another example of the fact that like she had no control over the image. It was even before the conservatorship, they really pushed who she was. And it's like the only control she had was on stage, which is very sad. And the fact that again, he pulled a fucking Ken. He pulled out a guitar and is like, you might as well just have been, I wanna push you around. Like seriously, dude, get the fuck on. Like
yes. I mean, she was, so the way it happened, alone in a hotel. They did not go to the hospital. Not alone. She was there with Justin, and she was there with her assistant, Felicia. So those were the only two souls that knew before this book was released. And she revealed it to everyone that knew that this had happened. But they were in a hotel. They got her some pills. She took the pills. And then once she is cramping and in unbearable pain and in the bathroom and over the toilet and just in there for hours, Justin is a fucking idiot and pulls out his guitar and starts playing for her, hoping that that's gonna help her. Like, no, dude. If anything, just like put down your fucking guitar and put your arms around me. What the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ugh. Guys are so dumb.
Boys are so dumb.
Boys are so stupid.
I don't know. And I'm really glad. It's funny, again, because I am such a believer in divine timing and everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. I was driving in my car listening to radio here in St. Louis, and I don't know what station it was, but there was someone, a man, of course, saying he didn't understand why Britney had talked about this now. And I do like understand, like sometimes, like, why do you want to let that out? But it's also just like, Britney, up until this book, has never stood up for herself. She's never explained what's happened. She's always just kind of let people do whatever. And I think it's partially because she knew, like, maybe society won't believe her. Like, what's the point of putting myself out there and being vulnerable if they're not going to take me seriously? And it just makes me so sad for her, you know? And, but this guy was saying, like, why would you bring it up? And it's sometimes a lot of men are very unaware that a lot of things work the way they're supposed to work, right? So it's like people condemning abortions and not realizing that, like, reproductive justice is a big reason why we still have domestic violence, because some people, like, will control their partners, like birth control, or, you know, fuck up with their shit, or give them potentially like abortion pills if they want to keep the child. You know, I feel like people don't think about that aspect. And I feel like having discussions about reproductive justice and how we should have access to these things, even if maybe later, like, we're not 100% sure we agree with it. Because that's sort of the vibe I got from Britney, is like, she did it. She knew it was the best choice, but she kind of, in hindsight, feels sadness around it.
Yes, most definitely. Like, and that's okay to feel that way. And I feel like a lot of women, there's so many stories where people feel that exact way. And it's healing to talk about things, you know, and even if after something happens, you don't talk about it right away, it's like you need that time, that space to be able to heal and just go through in your mind, like, everything that you did go through, mentally, emotionally, physically, all of it. And it was just her time to share it. She wanted to. And I feel sometimes in talking about it, that's healing in itself, and sharing is healing. And just letting other people know that, like, I went through this situation, and if you've gone through that situation too, here's just me sharing what happened, and that's okay. And so for whoever, whatever radio DJ, like, why is she sharing it now? Because she fucking wanted to. She wanted to, and maybe that's part of her process. This can be so healing for her, and it's creating so many conversations. In conversations that need to be had. This conversation needs to be had. Yes,
100%.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Also, fuck Justin Timberlake for breaking up with her in a text. Like, what the man?
So bad. So bad. I don't know how long after the abortion and getting pregnant from Justin, I don't know how much time there was between all of that and then the breakup, but like the fact that she was pregnant by him, like, yeah, mentally and emotionally, that's gonna fuck you up. And then soon after, however much time after, within the next year, I'm thinking, that's so fucked. That was so messed up.
In the book, how much time had passed. That was like something we noticed about, like, it's like it kind of felt like a fever dream because it wasn't super clear. She didn't give us dates. She didn't give us like maybe specific years. So it's like you're just following in the stream of consciousness, which I don't know, I thought worked.
Yeah. Let me see. How old was Britney when they broke up? Do you know?
I want to say that was in 2001. So if it was 2001, she was about 21.
2002 breakup.
Okay.
Yeah. But even still, I mean, you get pregnant by anyone, there's a connection there. There's always going to be some sort of an emotional connection there. There's going to be the what ifs. Like, you can't help yourself. That's human to just think all of those thoughts. And by no means at her age, being between 19 and then their 2002, 22 breakup. No, she was older than that. But just between that time, just being in your young 20s, trying to deal with that while being a celebrity, while dealing with all this other shit, and then your family's a piece of shit, and just all of it. Like, no, she had no time to really think about it and to go through what she needed to go through with that. She was go, go, go. She was international, most famous pop star in the world. She didn't have time to get over it. You know what I mean? Just getting over the fact that she had an abortion, the fact that she had a pregnancy with this man she loves. All of it. There are so many different emotions that she could have been feeling, and she didn't have time to go through any of it.
She has a lot of empathy for the people who have wronged her.
Yeah.
Because she gives him a lot of grace.
She's
like,
so
it's like
nice.
She understands, like, he was in the best time of his life, you know? Like, he made these choices, and I probably wouldn't make those choices, but he did.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very kind about how she refers to him. And then, you know, it definitely paints the picture of, like, something was wrong, because when they broke up, she didn't speak for months. She didn't speak to anybody for months.
She couldn't do anything. I mean, she was just going through that typical, like, first love heartbreak. I mean, I don't know about you, but like my first love heartbreak and everything like that, even if I chose to be done with that relationship, it was hard. That is so hard. And so for it to be done the way that it was done through a text message, it's over, is what he texted her. And yeah, her dealing with all of that, and it's go, go, go. You got to do this interview, that interview, blah, blah, blah. And then everyone is asking her about Justin. What happened? What happened? What happened? No, you don't want to speak to anyone. You can't even open your mouth because you're just going to cry, right?
Yeah, and the fact that she talks about how, like, he shows up at her house later with, like, I guess, like, an official breakup later. That's fucking framed.
He framed a breakup letter for her. Like, fuck off, dude. Go fuck yourself.
She still has it under her bed, you know.
But those are the kinds of things that you keep, right? And like, she's not keeping it framed in her fucking bedroom by any means, framed up anywhere on any wall ever. Fucking idiot. You take that shit out of the frame, you fold it a couple times, and you put it in your box, your private special box that everyone has a fucking box of their shit, right?
You know, he sucks from an astrology perspective because he's an Aquarius sun, Sagittarius moon, and Leo rising. And that just sets up this, like, he's a narcissist.
Yeah. I don't know what any of that means, but I fucking believe you, Bex.
Yeah. Well, because, like, okay, Aquariuses kind of show both the best and worst of humanity. They're like the humanitarian sign. And so you'll notice a lot of scammers are Aquariuses. He's a Sagittarius moon, so he has a lot of emotions that, like, are kind of like, he never knows when the joke stops. That's and he kind of fluctuates, and maybe he doesn't take things seriously.
Fauches.
And he's a Leo rising, so he really cares about how people see him.
Yeah.
Like, which I love that she did that, by the way. He must cringe. He's on the ball somewhere cringing of embarrassment. good.
Good. Oh my God, it's so good. So good. So in terms of Britney's quote unquote downfall, let's talk about where this all first started from, which is what we just talked about, the breakup. So the breakup, Britney really, she just couldn't handle it. She just couldn't handle everything that was coming at her, and with this breakup included. This breakup kind of like launched a whole bunch of stuff. It launched an attack on Britney because the narrative that Justin Timberlake then was spinning, because he was starting his solo career with his album Justified and Crimea River, was that Britney Spears cheated on him. Big ol' Hollywood juicy story. And she got attacked. She got attacked by America, by cameras, by interviewers. And she got attacked at every single angle. And it was Justin who kind of threw her under the bus, saying she cheated, she cheated, she cheated. And then everyone was going for Britney.
You see that this is the first time he did this.
Yeah.
That we know of.
Right.
And it was interesting because there was a special called Impact X and Nightline, It's Britney. Mm-hmm. And I had forgotten about this, but soon after, it was like Justin Timberlake, The Bachelor. And he did an interview with Rolling Stone where he was basically like, you know, she has a beautiful heart, but if I've lost my trust in somebody, like, I just can't be with them. And it's just like he was very intentionally creating this tale. And Britney shares in the book that, like, he cheated on her several times.
Yeah.
And she just looked past it, you know?
Yep. He cheated on her first. Not only that, it was multiple times with random fans. It was random people. It wasn't like, oh, I've known this person forever and I was gaining like random fucking strange ass all over the place. And cheating on her. She did look past it. She talked about that in the book. And then she also talked about, well, he cheated on me first, so I did cheat on him. But, like, you poor sweet soul, she made out with her choreographer that she's known for years. Like, it's different.
Not the same.
Yeah. Like, the same but different because you shouldn't be cheating on your partner. But different because Justin is literally just peeking out of his tour bus and grabbing the first bitch that came in, essentially. Like, that's how I kind of took it.
Yeah, and you could just tell that during this time, he just had the biggest ego about himself. Yeah. It's funny, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a Riverfront Times article. No, sorry, a St. Louis Post-Dispatch article where a teen had been like, whatever, JC Chazé is like better than you anyway. And they like grabbed her, kidnapped her. And then Justin was like essentially yelling at her for like saying that. And I'm like, so it's
you sent me a TikTok on that, and I was like, holy fuck, that was crazy.
But it also like that, this, you know, like there's just a lot of insight. Justin takes himself very seriously, right? And so it makes sense that he would want people to see him in a light where he's the victim, and so it's just really disappointing. And it's not the first time that a man has like let her down, because obviously her first heartbreak was her dad. You know, her dad set a shitty foundation for what she should expect in a male figure that loves her. But yeah, this really kind of starts her downfall. Like after that, you know, she kind of talks about how Paris Hilton like took pity on her at one point and was just very nice to her. How she meets Madonna and how Madonna like kind of really changed her perspective as an artist, because Madonna does not negotiate on her creative vision.
No, and Madonna is demanding. She is fucking Madonna. And that's how Madonna acts, is I'm fucking Madonna. Like, I'm going to get what I'm asking for. Otherwise I'm leaving. And so Britney, she really looked up to Madonna and saw just how much of like a boss she was, and was like, wow, that's kind of cool that she can be demanding in that way, because Britney has always felt she's never can be demanding in that way. She was a people pleaser her entire career, just a people pleaser, and never really learned, especially at a younger age, how to be in demand.
She's a Libra rising, so I feel like her nature is just to try to keep the peace at all times. But yeah, she talks about, you know, how meeting Madonna was a pivotal time in her life because she is a bad bitch, and how she kind of took a lot away from that, how like her collaboration with Madonna was really beneficial for both of them because it helped elevate her level of fame. In addition, it brought Madonna more fans.
Yeah.
She talks about her fling, or her, what did she call it? Her sexual
Her
brawl
brawl
with Colin Farrell. And
yeah.
honestly, I can't say I'm surprised. Like that man radiates like a very like primal and intense energy. And I feel like that was probably like some of the best sex of her life.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was rough and nasty, and she fucking loved it.
And it seems like she just needed it. You know,
Yeah.
she really just needed to be happy and like in her
Don't we
body.
all, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
100%,
come
yeah.
on.
Then she talks about her quickie marriage, which is okay. The way she navigates the discussion about her quickie marriage really makes a lot of sense, because it's like her mom was like kind of yelling at her and she's like, wait, I don't have to deal with this. Like after her and Justin, like they're not living together, she's living with her family. She goes to Las Vegas with this guy that it also, word on the street is the guy that like she married apparently was like her longtime hookup. Because she talks about losing her virginity at 14, which was under wraps and stuff.
Yeah.
Also, kudos to that guy if that's true, because that means he kept her secret in a time where like all of her family betrayed her.
Yeah.
And this guy was able to keep her secret. And so like kudos to him. He was an insurrectionist, so fuck that guy. But also that's a redeeming quality. But she talks about how like she didn't understand why it was a big deal. And to me, that shows that she's either one, very naive, or just doesn't automatically assume that people want to fuck her over.
I think both. And I think it's a naive to have that mentality that no one's going to stab me in the back. I think she was very naive. She was just, I think she always had been, from being a young girl, which of course you are because you just don't know any better. But even growing up and being in her teenage years and in her early 20s and being in her relationship with Justin and the breakup with Justin and all of it, I think she's just always been very naive and not really sure how to do the hard things. And I think that that's just a big part of her life. And those are parts of her own mistakes a little bit, and not being a little wiser and opening her eyes and seeing these things, because she always saw the good in people. But it's also very telling of just who she is, because she is just a sweetheart. At the end of the day, she's just a sweetheart, and she's just too nice. And I think that was a big problem for her.
Yeah, and like circling back, we covered this in like the first part, like her early life. Like she just really loved her family, you know? And I think when you grow up with a family that you just really love and you just like all support each other, you grow up with this idea of the world that like, well, other people like care about me. And unfortunately, time and time again, it was proven to her like, no, they like what you do for them. They don't like you, which is such a hard like pill to swallow. But her parents helped get her marriage annulled.
Yeah.
And
they made her. They made
her get it annulled. Yeah. And then okay, so she's going out. Like I think everyone remembers the photo with like Lindsay Lohan and Paris Hilton, where it's like an up the skirt, and I think they're not wearing underwear. I don't know if all of them are not, but you know, like she was under a lot of scrutiny during this time. Like obviously Justin has made it seem like she's this wrongdoer. You know, she's going out, she's partying, so it's like. Dude, also, okay, like the fact that there was this whole idea, this whole concept of the economy of Britney is so wild to me, because like, for example,
everyone is on her payroll. Everyone.
Well, but it's also just like, okay, so she would go to this dance studio. Across the street, there was a gym. The paparazzi would get a membership to the gym so that they could use the parking lot. And there was like an apartment, like at one point, and this comes from that Impact special, but like there was an apartment that had like a straight shot down. So they would rent it out, like Airbnb it to the paparazzi to be able to use it. I'm like, oh my God, like,
damn.
Back then, you could make so much money as a paparazzi getting that one shot, right? And it's just like, there were no laws in place to protect her. I mean, shit, dude, when you really think about it, anti-stalker laws didn't even come to be until the 80s.
This was one thing that I did want to talk about, that being a celebrity in the 90s was truly like the best and worst of both worlds. Like it was truly the best. Everyone craved that, and it was at a time where it was like, now you do need to watch yourself. You know you need to watch yourself because there's cameras everywhere and the internet is everywhere. So being a celebrity still in that time, we were still in that crossover. We weren't there yet, so it was great time to be a celebrity, but at the same time it was an awful time to be a celebrity because the interest at celebrities, there's always been an interest in celebrities, and there's definitely been peaks, highs and lows of people's interest in celebrities. And I just think in the 90s, like we were at a pretty high peak of people's interest. And like you said, how much money the paparazzi were making off photos of her, and they were swarming her. They were stalking her, not attacking, but essentially attacking her because they're and they're cornering her, and it was just the worst time to be a celebrity. And as she was, I mean, she was just going through some major turmoil of all of that, and that was only the beginning of it. She hadn't even had her kids at that point.
No, dude. And it just got worse, right? As like she meets Kevin, and I feel like Kevin had that, he just had such a taste for fame. I mean, they had a reality show, the Chaotic or whatever. And like she talks about in the book how he's trying to become a famous rapper or whatever, and how she just knows that everything he's doing is a joke. And like, but
the way she writes about Kevin, she's again just a very nice person, and she's very nice essentially to everyone in the book. She could have been so much meaner, but that's just not who she is. She has a way of talking about people, and when she wants to shade them, she doesn't go below the belt. She's still very nice about it. She was still and this is the father of her kids too, so I'm sure she's put that into account because she has respect for that in itself, and I think that's just her Southern girl charm, and those are her beliefs, and that's fine. I mean, I could never from a busted ass baby daddy like that, but that's her.
You said it best. She's very Southern in the way that she addresses and insults people. Because like when she talks about Kevin, right, she's like, people said that I could have been married to like royalty or, you know, this or that. And she's basically set it up like, I could have had anybody I wanted, but who did I fall for? This guy
Kevin
that like held me. Like, and it's so sad because he just gave her a sense of like comfort, like stability.
Can we talk about that? So,
yes.
Oh my gosh, with Kevin Federline. Okay, so Kevin Federline for me, it's just like red flags all over the place. Baby girl, what the fuck are you doing? Because they were dating for a while. They were dating for a little bit, but she was so in this bubble and just so like, let me not look at the news headlines because they're all attacking me and blah, 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 blah. And she's just trying to be cooped up because she's also talks about how she kind of has a little bit of social anxiety. She definitely has some social anxiety, and she would separate herself. Like she'd go and do the celebrity thing because she had to, or performances or whatever, but then she would very much go hunker down at home because she's got all this social anxiety because she's being attacked and stalked all fucking day. You can't blame her. But because of that, when she met Kevin Federline, he was backup dancer. He was at a music video, something like that, where that's how she met him. So she met him through work, whatever. Starts to, again, she's just crushing on this guy because she's always had a thing for boys. And so he's the next crush or whatever. And then it becomes more than that because it's just so sad that all she wanted, she said the first night that they had met, they ended up in a pool, and they're in this like hotel pool or her pool or someone's fucking pool, whatever, and he's just holding her, and she's like, that's all I wanted was just to be held. And this man, he would just hold me for hours. He wouldn't pull away. He wouldn't ask me to do anything else. He would just allow me to be in his arms for hours until I eventually finally could let go. And I'm like, dude, that's so sad. And then beyond that, that's kind of what made her fall for him is that and those intimate moments, which I can understand that. But then the fact that like she didn't know, how did she not know that he had 2 kids out there? Like when they got together, he had a like 1-year-old and then one on the way. One was about to pop out when they first met. And because she was so hunkered down and just let me be in my home and this is just what I'm doing, and she was hanging out with him, she had no idea that he had fucking kids. And it's just all these red flags. And I don't know why she's still, even after finding out he had 2 kids, because she asked him about it and he fessed up to it. Maybe she thought it was admirable that the first time she asked about it, he was like, yeah, I do. And maybe she thought, oh, okay, at least he's not lying to me. I can trust him because he didn't lie to me. Like, I don't know what it was, but she decided to look past it, continue her relationship with him despite all of that. And people, once it finally got out, then people were like, oh, yeah, you should maybe like leave him or whatever. But no one brought it up to her before, even though it was in magazines and everything like that. And that's just like sad that she didn't have people in her corner and people who were close to her to be like, hey, girl, he's got 2 kids. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, she didn't have that. Clearly, she didn't have that.
No, she didn't. And it's really sad because like the fact that the rest of the world knew about Shar Jackson, that was baby mama number 1. Like the fact that we were aware and she just I also think sometimes I feel like Britney probably struggled with this thing because people admire you, especially like close friends and family. Sometimes they admire you, but after a certain amount of time, it seems like people who really succeed at things, like if your friends and family aren't actively doing things that like fulfill them, that admiration turns to jealousy.
It does.
And I feel like a lot of people probably just wanted it to fail. Like, you know, they probably after, especially after with Justin, like this person who's on top of the world, they probably got a little bit of satisfaction. It's like, oh, well, little princess doesn't get everything she wants. And it's like, that's so sad. You know, she really cared so much about her family, and like you could just see it, like because they would do like videos, and we grew up in the time where there was just all of this content, and when she would like talk about her family, like she just loved them so much. It's like y'all really just didn't care about anything related to her.
We live in a world full of mean girls, and she had no chance. She had no chance. She was way too nice. That's so sad. That's so sad. Everyone in her life has just taken so much advantage of her. That poor girl. But with Kevin Federline, I mean, he did the same thing, and he weaseled his way in, and I'm sure he love bombed her. I mean, we have terms for these things now, right? He love bombed the fuck out of her, I'm sure, and especially to wiggle his way out of, oopsies, I have 2 kids I didn't tell you about, but I love you, I love you, I love you. I'm gonna hold you in the pool for a couple more hours, you know? And then they ended up getting married, and then that's when all she wanted was normalcy and a family and love and to have people in her corner. So after they got married, they got pregnant, and I didn't realize Britney Spears was pregnant for 2 fucking years. That is crazy. That sounds like actual fucking torture.
I love how she talks about, though, that like how much she enjoyed like food and sex, because I feel like that's so weird to me about pregnant women is like people think that just because you're pregnant, like you can't still enjoy sex or be sexy. It's like, how do you
pregnant women are like the horniest?
Like, yeah. And so I really love that she talked about that. But she really kind of talks about just how much emotion she had, and again, like mental illness obviously runs in her family, you know, so of course with all the hormones she was just feeling a lot. She was very protective of her, like, you know, of her sister during that time because she's feeling very maternal. She's starting to like the nesting period. It's so interesting to see like where her head was at, and she describes herself at one point as she's just like America's sweetheart and the meanest woman alive, and I'm like, yes.
yes, most definitely. But yeah, I didn't realize she was pregnant for 2 years, but she did enjoy some parts of her pregnancy. But I feel like she kind of, I don't know, I feel like she had a love-hate with her pregnancy because at the same time, she didn't really dig into her pregnancy and how much she loved it. She said she loved food and sex, and then everything else was pretty miserable for a while. And then she also loved the feeling of protecting her baby inside of her. So it was like really just those 3 things were pretty good, but everything else about it, I feel like she didn't really enjoy it necessarily. And then she didn't enjoy all the negativity around her. Like, God forbid a pregnant woman gains some fucking weight. Go fuck yourself. You know, she was scrutinized for that too. She's literally pregnant. Go fuck off.
I love that she addressed that in the book. She's like, when did I, you know, agree to be 17 forever? Like, why am I a villain for gaining weight? And it's like, I really think that speaks to the way that like here in the United States, like, I feel like there's this, you know, for pop stars, for people in the public eye, you're sexualized, you're made to feel like you have to be beautiful because you're, I don't know, like contributing to people's time. Like people are giving you their time, therefore you owe them to look your best. And it's like, I don't know. It's very sad. You know, there was just so many high expectations of her that I'm just like, y'all I don't understand how you feel like she's supposed to keep these, you know? It's unrealistic.
Seriously. Yeah, it's most definitely unrealistic. And I know she had a hard time through the pregnancy, through having her first child and then getting pregnant again. It was again a love-hate, but again with that social anxiety, and you can't blame her for having that social anxiety because she's being attacked by paparazzi. But wanting to just stay home, I'm just gonna stay home. But then on top of that, she was having these major issues with her fucking loser baby daddy and him trying to start his rap career. And after she had her first child and got pregnant with her second one, that was when he was going through his whole rap phase. Let's absolutely call it a fucking phase because Sir did not make a career out of it. But
Yeah, and it's like, ugh. You know, you fucking social climber. You really tried it. And so I'm glad that we have put him in his place of where we think he should be. Funny story, for that Impact Nightline thing, it was like for Britney's for Justin, the mom, the dad, the sister, their representatives did not want to comment, but I love that they put a little sting in there and they were like, yeah, and Kevin Federline refused to comment. It's like he doesn't even have representation. Fuck this guy. Like
that is subtle shade that he doesn't have people to comment for him. Oh my God, I love that. But yeah, she was going through it with him too. Him trying to be a rapper and be cool. And Britney fell off and she's just pregnant. And yeah, she's my baby mama and my wife or whatever. And kicking her out of studios, not letting her in, hotels even. And it was just a whole fucked up situation. And to be a new mom and pregnant, both of those things with this man who's supposed to love you and be your husband and be your partner in all of this, he's nowhere to be fucking found. That's so hard. That sucks. So he did not make things easy by any means.
Well, it also just shows how much of like a manipulative piece of shit he is because he didn't want anything to do with the kids at the beginning.
Right.
And then later, you know, he, as we all know, like he's the one who ended up raising them. And the kids seem like they have a particular idea of their mother. And it's like, where do you think that came from?
It's where exactly.
The fact that, you know, when he probably like felt, you know, rejected or like, oh, society doesn't want me to be anything else but Britney Spears like partner. You know, that's probably around the time where he's like, yeah, I think I want a divorce. And like she talks about that, about how it was definitely Kevin's idea, but everyone told her like, oh, well, you should kind of start it. And she has this, she hates to be humiliated.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest, that's, and you
it
see
was a
that
big trend throughout the book is her her being humiliated or to be embarrassed in any kind of way. She doesn't handle it well at all, which is hard as a celebrity because it's going to happen, but she cannot handle it very well at all.
And I think that also attests to the scrutiny that she was under. Like she probably felt like it was the end of her world at times, you know, because of how intense it felt. But so Kevin initiates Kevin, you know, the idea's out there that Kevin wants to divorce, but you should initiate it so you're not humiliated. She does it and therefore has to pay all of his legal fees. And, you know, it's just like, this is sort of the really the beginning of the end, because you see that he's like trying to gain like control of certain things. He's using the children against her, and they're just trying to paint this photo of like, she's erratic and she's wild and she's very unpredictable.
That was exactly what they were doing after their divorce. I mean, it was everyone against Britney. I mean, even her family were Team K-Fed. Her family, they were all about him in interviews and everything like that, talking him up. And he's a great dad. He does da-da-da-da-da. And Britney, we don't know what she's doing. She's partying a lot. She's with these men, blah, blah, blah. She went through a couple different relationships that were also just so bad for her. She eventually started dating the paparazzi themselves, and it was like, girlie, what are you doing, babes? It's not helping anything. After that, then she got into the conservatorship. Eventually, is they pinned her as she's wilding out. She's going wild. She's going crazy. She doesn't care about being mom. But they created that story. That wasn't it necessarily. All she wanted was to see her kids. But at that point, Kevin had control. He had the kids. He had her family on his side. So everyone is telling Britney that she's doing so many things wrong that Kevin should have the kids, basically, is what she's being fed. And and painting the narrative that she's just wilding out and going crazy when really she's just at home and all she wants to do is see her babies, but they won't let her. So yeah, she's going to be driven a little bit mad.
Around this time is also the time of the shave, which I feel like, unfortunately, in hindsight, it makes sense why she shaved her head, because people wanted her to be like this doll for everybody. And she was just going through the worst time in her life. She didn't want to look pretty for people. But unfortunately, like, people were like, oh, she's hysterical. She's losing her mind, you know, and that just helped add to their narrative. And it's like, she was provoked. She was put to this place. Like, it's just so unfortunate. We were talking because the timeline is a little unclear. Because there was like a dateline where they have like Kevin on the phone and he's like, yeah, we're on our way to the house, like making it seem like it's this big ordeal that he's trying to get his children back. But the way, and again, this might be a different event, it might be the same event, it seems like Britney perhaps was like told that someone was in the house and that's why she was like in the bathroom with her son.
So you're talking about the time, because I remember this story. It was a big story and there were like news helicopters, like police, this huge story. And I didn't think that she talked about this story in the book, because there is a different story she talks about in having like a sleepover with her mom, but her mom kind of set her up. And that's when police and, or not FBI, but police kind of swept in and the ambulance took her away to get her into the conservatorship. But before that, I do remember this being a separate event that you're talking about, because it had to do with the kids, and she like locked herself in the bathroom and they were worried about her well-being as well as the kids' safety being with her, and she like refused to allow anyone in, and it was like time to give Kevin the kids back, or they were going to switch or something like that, and she like was refusing, and so they had to get police and everything involved, and she did not talk about this in the book.
Okay, so that was a separate event.
It's gotta be.
Yeah, okay, so there has to be some condition in which she can't talk about it, or again, because like in her mom's book she talks about her mom definitely makes it seem like nothing is her fault. And I don't know, it's also just like, if everyone was painting this portrait of like what they wanted Britney and like these moments of like complete chaos, it's wild because Britney's mom and her sister definitely incriminate themselves with their book.
In their book?
In their books, because they say a lot of things that sort of were playing out, and it's just like, interesting. I wonder why you feel like you have to speak up on that.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously this was before Britney could speak her piece about it. So yeah, it kind of just seems like all of this was very set up, because okay, something she doesn't talk about is she had a manager that is known for putting people in conspiratorships, named Sam Lufty.
Yeah. He was it's so weird that, because there's a person for everyone, right? Even these weird things that you would never think of. But of course there is. If there's money to be made, they'll make it happen. And so in Hollywood, happened with Britney, happened with Amanda Bynes. This guy was involved as well, to put celebrities into a conservatorship, which is just crazy, but it's apparently a thing, and it was him.
Yeah. And so that's what when she's referring to in her book, like my friend, I think she's talking about him. But in her mom's book, Sam Lufty got into Britney's circle because he called her and was like, oh, Kevin's going to try and plant drugs on her. Turned out not to be true, supposedly. And then there was another incident where he's like, I have a jewelry company and I'd love for you to be the representative of. And so she kind of like started talking to him, and eventually he got Britney's number, became her manager. So it's kind of like, you're talking about how, oh, this guy popped into my life and I don't know, whatever. And then he's your daughter's manager. So it's just sort of like, I think you're trying to switch up the narrative, Lynn. What's going on? And so I really do think that there is something around it that she just can't talk about it. Probably related to the conspiratorship, maybe separate law, who knows? She didn't mention him, and she mentioned a lot of other people that were her managers. So it just seems very suspicious.
Yeah, that there's something more, and obviously with that something more, they can't talk entire details. But because of that man and meeting her mother, Lynn, and having that connection, and he's supposedly the Hollywood guy you call to get your pop star in a conservatorship, And that's what happened. And so she does talk about the other police incident where her mom invited her over nonchalantly about, let's have a sleepover. I haven't seen or talked to you or cared about you in months, but let's have a girls' night sleepover. Come on over, baby. So Britney comes over and police show up. Ambulance shows up. She gets taken away. She gets taken to the hospital. She gets analyzed by all these supposed doctors that may or may not have been hired by her father to say that she is crazy, and gets put into a conservatorship. And that's how it happened. And since then, again, with Britney being such a people pleaser, and she even talks about this in the book, that she thought if she was just good enough, and yeah, I have all these rules, well, it's my family doing all these rules for me, and my dad and my parents all think that I need this conservatorship. Maybe I do, and maybe I'll calm down and whatever. And if I please them and I say yes, and I take the pills, and I'm a good girl, and I show them that I'm okay, I will get out of this. So she just let them walk all over her and slowly take away every single possible right, because she thought, well, this is my family doing it to me, and if I just do what I'm told, they'll let me out of it. And that was not what happened.
They also like held her kids at like over her. Like, if you
Yeah.
do what we say, like so it's like, it's understandable, but this is sort of like circling back, like there's a sense of helplessness, right? Like she kind of learned it from her mother. I feel like it's inherited from her grandmother. Like she sort of just kind of, she doesn't poke the bear, she doesn't ask questions, she's just like, okay, and I think that comes from like trauma too, you know, she's experienced a lot of traumatic things. Like, I think one of the most chilling things is when she's talking about how, like, when her dad like started taking over, because she would collect all of her receipts. That's how she did her bookkeeping,
Oh my
right?
God, I know what you're about to say. This part gave me actual fucking chills. Like my jaw
Okay.
dropped. I was like, no. And I immediately rewound it and I had to listen to it again. Oh my God.
But he basically throws out her like thing of receipts and is like, I'm Britney Spears now.
Yeah.
And it's just, ooh, it's
I
just very
can't.
much like
I
this was
so
all,
believe that happened too. I
yeah.
believe that was a real moment in Britney's life, and it is so chilling that her father stared at her dead in the fucking eyes. Like, don't bother collecting receipts. Don't try to prove you're not crazy. Don't try to do anything. I'm fucking Britney Spears now. I control everything. That is so crazy.
I also feel like it was very, because Brittany talks about throughout the whole book that she begged her mother to stop being with her father. So I'm also sure that there were years of resentment. She like bought her a house, like convinced her mom to basically divorce him the first time, which she goes back to him.
Yeah. I mean, that
Yeah,
part
like,
of it too. Ugh.
so it's like he had to have this bubbling in there, just this hatred toward, like, you think you're going to get one over on me, your father? Like, I'm the head of this household. Like, just gross.
Yeah. So gross. I could not when that happened. But yes, Brittany, she talks about being in the conservatorship and how they basically took everything away from her. They told her lies, essentially. You can't hire your own lawyer. You have no control over anything. And she just really thought that if I'm a good girl and I do what they ask me to do, they will get me out of this. But that's what dug her deeper into it, which is just so sad. And again, she's just too nice. She was just too nice of a fucking person, and it's so messed up.
Dude, and like, so her conservatorship started in February 1st of 2008. And just so you know what pieces of shit her family are, her mom released her book, Through the Storm, a real story of fame and family in a tabloid world, by Lynn Spears, the mother of Jamie Lynn, Brian, and Britney Spears, was released on September 16th.
That same
Like,
year.
that same fucking year.
Yeah.
So that means when they were like, because the event where you were like, they took her to the hospital, all that happened in January. Because I knew like the thing with Kevin, that they all must have happened very close together. Because less than a month later, she's in this conservatorship. You know, so it's like her mom must have been writing that from the time that they were pulling her away, or had, you know, it's just, these people are so calculated. They're dude bad. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's so messed up. And you've mentioned that her mom in her book had always just been like, well, it wasn't my fault, or I wasn't aware, or she didn't have control. It was her dad, Britney's dad. And so it was very much, I had nothing to do with anything. I'm innocent. And this is my book telling you how innocent I am and how I have no control over any of this. But like,
I've done nothing. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, but like, yes. And then that's the thing but like, you're her mom though, and you're her family. And if you're a person who cares and they are lying, and even her mom could have even helped her, like, yeah, babe, you can get your own lawyer. Britney had talked about times where she is crying, where she is begging, where she knows something isn't right and I just need help and I need something. And even being in that conservatorship with all these doctors analyzing her and pushing pills down her throat and pushing these different things that she had to do. It's just so messed up that a mom can stand there and just be like, no, baby, listen to the doctors, knowing that it's all wrong.
The fact that they eventually put her on lithium, which is the drug that killed her grandmother.
That was full circle. That was a full circle moment.
That was really and it was intense and it was dark and
I cried. I cried at that part. I did.
It's very emotional because it's just like these things are playing out again. Like they weren't solved the first time, so they play out. And like, I mean, that's what generational trauma sometimes I think is, like it's this cycle of whatever. But that was really a difficult part of the book. And also, like, I'm really glad that I did because I did not read Jamie Lynn or Lynn's, like, fuck them. But I did listen to the Glamorous Trash episodes about it. And thank you, Chelsea Devontes, for fucking reading it. So I didn't have to. But all of their books, because even, her conspiratorship ended, right? In
conservatorship. You're saying it wrong, by the way.
Thank you.
Conservatorship. Like I think you're like, but it is a conspiracy though.
I am. Yeah. I keep saying conspiracy, but anyway, conservatorship.
Yes,
Thank you. But it ended in November 12th of 2021, and Jamie Lynn's book came out January 2022.
Yeah, months later. She did the same fucking thing. She pulled from her mom. Mom wrote this book to be like, oh, it wasn't me when the whole thing started. So then when the whole thing is ending, Jamie Lynn, oh, it wasn't me. I didn't fucking know. Here's my book. Like, no. Oh, you fucking bitches. You fucking bitches. Ugh.
And it's funny because, the conservatorship was operated by her father, but also Miss Lou Taylor, who is Jamie Lynn's manager. And apparently, allegedly, Jamie had an affair with Lou Taylor, so that's sort of why she had let him borrow some money. He owed her, I think, like $50,000.
Wait, Jamie Lynn, Britney's little sister?
No, Jamie, the father. Sorry, they all have such fucking similar.
I know, I fucking hate it. I can't stand it. I'm like, oh my god, what are you guys doing over here?
Yeah. So to clarify, Jamie, the father, had a potential alleged affair with
Jamie Lynn's manager, Lou Taylor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jamie had this supposed affair and had borrowed $50,000, which makes sense why she's the conservator, because she was owed back that original money. Also, there's something really fucked up in Jamie Lynn, the daughter's book. She talks about how she learned how to navigate her money through Lou Taylor. So that means she knew what was up. She was on the board to be one of the conservators. She knew what was going on.
Yes, exactly. So Britney Spears is deep in her conservatorship at this point. She is begging for help from anyone and everyone who will listen, but quite frankly, A, no one is on her side, and B, she just doesn't have any close friends because she's been taken away from everyone. And in this slow process of just taking everything away from her, I think it was close friends and relationships as well as that. Let's also talk about the fact that during her conservatorship, I forget his name or who he was or how they even met, but she started dating some guy who he even became a co-conservator, written legally as a co-conservator in her case. And she dated this guy, and she said everything changed in their relationship once he did officially become a co-conservator. And it's just mind-boggling to me that as miserable as she was, this obviously wasn't right for someone to be able to enter her life in a romantic way, but also be so evil that he is a co-conservator. And he probably talked to Britney about, this is going to help you and I'll fight for you and blah, 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 which he obviously didn't either. And Britney just felt so icky about it that she couldn't be with this man anymore. And they broke up after he became a co-conservator, which that part to me is just so disgusting that someone weaseled their way in to that extent.
Yeah, that was what was sort of unclear, because he sort of like ended up renouncing his like being a co-conservator, but I was unclear if like he had like the only reason they would let her be around him was if he was in that role and they trusted him, or if he was like sneaky and whatever. But I don't know. I think it said something about him though, where he kind of started to realize like this is kind of fucked up and like dipped out. She also talks about how like she had kind of lost interest in him anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, at that
So
point.
she was kind of just whatever, like if you want to go, then go.
Mm-hmm. And then she started dating Sam. She met him. He was a dancer on set at one point for her. She's another dancer, but she loves dance. She's talked about her passion for dancing, especially. And so they were dating for a hot minute. We know that they eventually got married, and obviously she wrote this book before they divorced and everything ended. So I don't know. I have so many questions on that, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So she's deep in this conservatorship, asking for help. No one is helping her. Fast forward to years and years and years of torment for this poor girl and just not being able to get any help. But the Free Britney movement starts gearing up and revving up and gaining traction. And Britney even hears about it and realizes, I think through the internet and through Free Britney and through all of this, she's finally getting the information she's looking for. Finds out, oh, I can get my own fucking lawyer, which is just crazy that she got that info from the fucking Free Britney movement. But she does. And it was like, it was in a span of a year or two since Free Britney came out and her getting out of the conservatorship officially. But in that year or two, when you think about like legalities and going to court and shit like that, and she was in that conservatorship for 13 years, pretty fast. It all happened pretty fucking fast.
You know what? It's really tragically beautiful that it's like the thing that finally helped Britney get completely out of us was that she realized she had the love and support of her fans.
Yeah.
Because Tess and Babs, who are, you know, behind the Free Britney movement, they were showing up at court because apparently you can do that. Like they were showing up in court and they would talk about how like she typically wouldn't even say anything during these court proceedings, because one time she had suggested, and you know, something that I want to bring up and we'll circle back to it, but in Jamie Lynn's book, she talks about how at one point Britney had been like, if I'm getting tested for drugs, I think my dad should be tested for alcohol. Mm-hmm. And the judge basically said to her, who do you think you are to demand this? Basically, nobody was taking her seriously. So she did not want to put any effort into this. It kind of also makes sense why it kind of seems like she just went along with it, right? Like she kind of like, this is what it is. And she talks about when she was in rehab the second time, because her father was like, you're on amphetamines, you have to go. And like, these were like caffeine supplements.
She was on like caffeine pills and she would use it like pre-workouts and stuff like that, even pre-workouts. And her dad was like, you're on drugs, go to rehab. Like, what?
So it seems like when she was there, like one of the nurses made her aware, like, hey, people are like rooting for you. And that's finally what kind of got the ball rolling. Because so I mentioned earlier, like that episode was released April 16th of 2019. So from that until the conservatorship ended in, what did I say? November of 2022. Like that's not a lot of time, but like also it's the legal system. I'm sure everything was delayed. There was a lot of formalities, you know, it is very impressive how quick, in the grand scheme of things, I think once she realized like people were on her side, that it moved so much faster.
Yeah, most definitely. And that part of it is, it's beautiful. It is, because all her life she's just wanted people in her corner, people on her side, people to look out for her, people to care about her. And you would think that is your family, that is your mom, your dad, your sister. But it just wasn't. And it was the complete opposite, that it is essentially strangers, but her fans, not strangers, because that's not fair to say about someone's fans, but I'm just saying it wasn't her family who she thought she was close to. It was these people who she's never actually met and doesn't necessarily know them, but they know her. They are rooting for her. It's her fandom, and they helped her. And it's just her whole life, that's all she's wanted. And she's found that time and time and again in her fans. And she says that in the book. She does allude to that a couple of times, I think, in the book. So yeah, it's a little bit of poetic justice that everyone who was ever close to her never helped her, but it ended up being her fans. And as an artist, I mean, what more can you ask for? I mean, a lot. We can ask for a lot more, but you can ask for a lot more. But in fans, thank goodness her fans were there and were watching out for her.
She like, and I think that this is also a testament that, like, you know, when times feel really grim or there's something that we care about, like, we are so much more powerful than we think we are. And if we can like really, you know, put something out in the world and really showcase our voices, like, we can be heard. The Free Britney movement is definitely proof of that. And, you know, good for her. I honestly, I think this is one of those cases that everyone should be aware of, because if one of the most successful, famous pop stars can basically have the label of hysteria put on her and be locked away and taken away, have all her rights taken away, that could happen to any of us at any moment, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you're so right. Like I said way earlier in this podcast, it's just hard to believe that the world's biggest pop star, she's America's pop princess, America's sweetheart growing up. She has all this money, this power, this fame, how she got caught in this trap. She got caught in a mousetrap set by her own family, which is just so messed up. And the fact that it did happen to her, I mean, it can happen to anyone. It can absolutely happen to anyone. So it's just, that's scary to have that many awful people in your life where that could happen, but it can happen. So after Britney got out of the conservatorship, anyone who actually loves you and cares for you, family, aka her little sister, sure, why not? Let's write a book. Let's write a book. She took a page from her mother and let's write a book, released it as a response of Britney getting out of the conservatorship, which is just so messed up. She claims that wasn't it. Doesn't she even write in the book, like, I started writing this a long time ago?
Yeah, like over a year ago. It's like, it was still toward the ends of your sister's leadership.
So gross. So Jamie Lynn comes out with a book. I've heard it's awful. You haven't read it, but you've listened to podcasts about it.
Yeah, and it was okay. So it's funny because it was supposed to be called "I Must Confess," which is like a Britney Spears song.
Yeah,
and people started giving her flack for that, so she changed it to "Things I Should Have Said." And she explained something in the book, or that was said in the podcast episode, that really sums up her life, honestly. So she talks about how when Britney was on stage singing, she would stand behind her, and when Britney would be done, she would take a bow. And I'm like, yeah, that basically sums up how you think Britney's talent works. Like, it works for you, it works for all of you. Sure,
go ahead, take credit for it, Jamie Lynn. Go ahead, stupid bitch.
She's the worst, honestly. And like, it's, I don't know, it's very like nice of Britney, because again, has so much like empathy and whatever. Like, she even explains that she understands why Jamie Lynn came out the way that she did, because she didn't grow up with them being poor. She like, although she like experienced like her father and his abusive tendencies, like, you know, it wasn't as bad. And like at one point Britney buys them a house and she's like, why would Britney buy us a house? And it's like,
that was her response. She was like 9 or 10. Jamie Lynn was like 9 or 10. Like, why'd you buy us a house? So, I mean, I think with Jamie Lynn, part of it is like, okay, it's not your fault, but that doesn't mean that you're not a shit human. It's not her fault, but she is a shit human, but it's not her fault. She was just a spoiled brat. She was a spoiled brat. And when you are a spoiled brat, especially to that consent, that's who you turn out to be, and you use, because that's what you were taught to do. She was taught to do that from her parents, and it's okay. And we are using Britney's money is our money. It's the family's money. Britney's fame and power, all that's ours too. It's for the whole Spears family. And Jamie Lynn just went right into that as well with her own career, everything that she's ever had, her mentality, who she is, her career, to just even like getting pregnant as a teen, and okay, she had the baby and she got to stay with the baby daddy or whatever. But like, again, she was so spoiled. And because she was so spoiled and was told, no, you can never do wrong, that was still not wrong that she got pregnant at such a young age, because she's still with the baby daddy, and that's all right. And we're going to have this baby, and you have support, and we have money, and it's fine.
So I thought that she was still with the baby daddy, but they've split up. She's actually married to another guy.
Yeah, I'm just talking about when she first got pregnant. She was still with the baby daddy before. Yeah, they're not together anymore, which is fine, which is very expected, quite frankly. Teen pregnancies, hello, that's just what happens most of the time. But yeah, it was just at the time of her getting pregnant, she and the baby daddy was still around for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know, in her own book, dude, like the things that are specifically hers, right? Like her pregnancy, getting married, that second, or I don't know if she even married the baby daddy, but when she was married, like she doesn't go into huge detail about it, but it's wild because she makes her sisters break up with Justin Timberlake about herself. And I'm like, what? Like, not even just her money and her power. Like, literally anything that belongs to Britney is up for the whole family to analyze. And it's just like, it's so sad. And like, this book and her mom's book are completely trying to rewrite the history that Britney, like, and people can say, maybe this isn't true, maybe it isn't, whatever, but these are all different accounts. Yeah. They're all different accounts, and it's like that intentionally. And you also see in Jamie Lynn's book, she has a lot of resentment for her mother. And it's wild because her mother adores her. It seems like she is her mother's favorite.
Yeah, she's definitely the favorite.
But like, there's a part in her book where she's like, wow, my mom really revels in being the mother of Britney Spears. It's like, don't you revel in being the sister of Britney Spears? So right? It's like, there's no self-awareness with any of these people. It's just insane. Truly.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. Because I, again, didn't listen to the podcast or obviously read their books or anything like that. But I knew in Britney's mom's book, she just tries to say, like, I didn't know, it's not my fault, basically, and taking no responsibility for any of it. And then in Jamie Lynn's book, it was just, yeah, a big piece of garbage. So thanks for that, Jamie Lynn.
Well, man, you could have just taken a break.
She could have helped her sister. Like, she could have been the one, and she could have been the one a long time ago had she be a normal fucking person. And at that point, too, it's not like Jamie Lynn, with Britney going through this conservatorship. I mean, how old was Jamie Lynn when Britney finally got into the conservatorship? She was still old enough. She's old
like
enough.
10 years younger than her. So it's like when she started the conservatorship, she was probably like 17. So around the time that she was pregnant. So it's like, okay, you had your own shit going on. Mm-hmm. Sure. Maybe you didn't exactly know what was going on, but it's like you later became a co-conservator.
She was a co-conservator, and Britney was in this for 13 years. That's a long time.
And again, like I mentioned this earlier, but like the fact that Lou Taylor sort of told her and taught her how to manage her money, like, bitch, you incriminated yourself in your book. Like, you knew how to navigate money. You didn't, like, what did you make money off of? A failed music career and Zoe 101? Like, the residuals couldn't have been that much. Mm-hmm. You were living off of your sister's money. Like, period, point blank. Let's be honest, Bibi.
Zoe 101 was only 2 seasons. That's not a long time for a TV show. Babe, where's the money, honey?
Yeah.
It's only Nickelodeon money. It's not prime time.
Yeah, and in Jeanette McCurdy's book, she talks about how like she didn't make a whole lot of money for being like a co-star in her show. So there's no way. Yeah. I think Miranda Cosgrove at one point was making like 6 figures. So probably being the sister of Britney Spears, she was making about that.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's messed up though. She definitely failed her own sister, and Britney had such admiration for her little sister once upon a time. And it just, to see their relationship where it is now, and to see that Jamie Lynn just was another person who failed Britney, that sucks. Talking about, I guess, moving forward now that Britney is out of the conservatorship, Jamie Lynn put her book out there. Obviously, Britney was not happy with that. There was the whole Instagram stuff of Britney just calling people out. Oh my God, I loved that, quite honestly. It's like, yes, see, Britney does have a voice. She does know how to use it. She just literally was not able to use it. But seeing Britney call everyone out on Instagram, post conservatorship, and seeing all of her posts on Instagram and on social media, people were very worried about her. And she kind of talks about her life post conservatorship in the book as well. And that kind of opened my eyes to who Britney is now, who she is today, why she posts the things that she's posting on Instagram, and why people think it's a little bit weird. But for Britney, like, it's just an outlet for her. It's an outlet. So she talks about how she finally gets to live the life that she wants to. She and Sam get married, and they had actually gotten pregnant, and Britney had lost that child, which I'm sure was just very heartbreaking and very sad for her, because I had heard the rumors during her conservatorship in her relationship with Sam that she wanted to have a baby, and she literally was not allowed to. Her dad was like, no, you're not having a baby. So when she finally got out of it, she was able to get out of her birth control or whatever, and they tried for a family, and it just didn't happen. And now we know that they are no longer together. But beyond that, she just is living her life. She is living her life, man. And her Instagram posts, they may be a little bit weird. And the dancing, you may not understand the dancing and trying on clothes and stuff like that. But she talks about all of that. Like, dancing literally is one of the few things that has made her happy her entire life. That is not something that she ever wants to stop doing. That is her art. Like, outside of her music and stuff like that, or just for her to be able to dance, that's when she feels herself. That's when she feels free. That's when she feels her most creative, and she just loves to dance. So she puts out these dancing videos. Why does she put out these dancing videos, and why are they a little bit weird, and why is she in these like outfits and stuff that are skimpy or whatever? Because she fucking wants to. She was not able to do anything that she wanted to for over 13 years. And now that she has her freedom and she just wants to be a little silly and she wants to dance around and share that video with the people who do get it, with her fans who do understand, with people who do hype her up and want to see it, fucking let her. She was so held up back for so long. So she kind of explains the why in terms of like who she is now and her posts and stuff like that, which I appreciated that. It opened my eyes more to who she is.
And the book is very funny. Like, she has a very very clear sense of humor. And I love that on the back she addressed the fact, she's like, you probably thought this book was going to be written in all emojis, didn't you? Like, I love that you don't take yourself that seriously. And it's a beautiful book, dude. I'm on my third listen, because I'm just like, I want to make sure that I really take away everything I meant to take away from it. I highly suggest it.
Yeah.
You know, if you haven't read it, please do. I don't know. I think it's an important piece of literature, personally.
Read it, listen to it. Michelle Williams does a fantastic job narrating it. I don't know, is Michelle Williams, is she like from the South at all?
I don't know. I can look that up now, but she does a really good
reading. She it's like she channeled her inner Britney Spears, because Britney, she's from Louisiana. She has a little bit of that twang, you know, and it comes out in things here and there. And I feel like Michelle Williams, she came out with that twang here and there, and she got into it. There was emotion in her reading and her performance for the audiobook. I thought she did a very, very good job. I loved it.
I did too. She's from Montana, so I'm sure that there's a little bit of that rural like energy that she was able
maybe
to
mountain. Okay. Yeah, I was curious though, because I kind of heard it a little bit in Michelle Williams and her reading as Britney, but I'm like, is she just channeling her inner Britney? Is she trying to put a little twang in there, or is that natural? Like, I didn't know. But it was perfect. It was perfect.
Perfect. And you can tell that she's not making fun of her. She's just really, like you said, trying to channel her inner Britney.
Yes. Yeah, I thought she did a great job. So all around, a really fantastic book. Like you said, I think it's pretty important. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I'm hoping Britney throughout her entire life has learned those lessons as well, is that she knows she's too nice. She tries to channel her inner Madonna in demanding a room and being a boss bitch, but that's still very hard for her because of her Southern roots and just who she is as a person. But never again, man. Never again can she be put in that situation. And Britney Spears fans, and especially everyone now, they're not going to let her be put in that situation ever again.
Dude, I would be bummed if she never toured again. But at the same time, I'm like, live your best life. Do whatever you want to do until the end of days. Because your story is both really interesting and beautiful and tragic. And you just deserve to live the life you want to live.
Exactly.
And it seems like she's...
Yeah, most definitely. Post book, people were asking, like, is she going to come out with a new album? Is she going to tour? Is she going to do this? Is she going to do that? And at this point, like, just let her fucking chill for a little bit, man. Like you just said, let her just live her life. It would totally be a shame, but I have hope that she will come out with something. No pressure. No timeline, no expectations, but I do have hope sometime in the future that she will absolutely do something because she loves it. She loves the artistry. She obviously loves her fans. She loves dancing. She loves performing and putting on a good fucking show. That's important to her. And I think the fact that when she got out of the conservatorship that she did Tiny Dancer with Elton John, that I think the fact that she did come out with that song, and it was kind of, it wasn't a major Britney song, and she had the help of Elton John, and half of it was like his old song. But that tells me that it's still in her. But she just needs she needs a minute. And we're going to give her all the time she could ever ask for.
I want to ask, like, because I feel like for the last 2 days, maybe like it's been a week since you had asked me to do this. Have you like realized or something about Britney that you had forgotten about? Because I will say I had forgotten that she did a song with the Yin Yang Twins.
What? When? Go ahead.
It was on In the Zone album.
Really?
Yeah, it's like the second song. So the first one is Madonna and her, like Me Against the Music.
Yeah.
And because I was listening to it on Spotify, and then it was like, we're gonna go to the club with Britney and get crunk. I'm like, wait, what? And then I guess maybe we were from a time where like we had TRL, like we were watching things like on, and I don't think that was a single or anything, but I feel like very rarely were people maybe listening to the whole album. Like they just listened to the hits. But that was something, I was like, what the fuck? How did I not know that was a thing?
Wow. And In the Zone came out in 2003?
Yeah.
What? I had no idea that they had a song. She had a song with the Yin Yang Twins. I was listening to her all day yesterday, just again doing housework and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about this song and this song and this song and this song. She's done a lot with the Black Eyed Peas. A lot with the Black Eyed Peas, a lot with will.i.am specifically. But no, I didn't know about the Yin Yang Twins.
I like her will.i.am years, personally.
Yeah, me too. It was fun. It was very clubby, and like that was like when I was like 21, 22. So I was like, fuck yeah.
Dude, it was perfect going out music for sure. Oh, it's called I Got That Boom Boom, featuring the Yin Yang Twins.
What? Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to listen. I love that.
Yeah.
One more thing for Britney's future that I kind of wanted to talk about that I'm scared for. I'm hoping she will never be put in that situation again, but I really do think she's going to let her family back into her life at one point in the future, and I'm scared for that. As of right now, she's not, and she kind of makes peace with that in the book, that I am like choosing to not have my family in my life, but that's hard to actually do. And I know there's a lot of people, it's 2023 and things have progressed, and if you need to separate yourself from your family and that's what's best for you, people do most definitely do that. I just think that Britney's mentality with family is just so ingrained in her that she needs her family. And like you do. But it just sucks when they are who they are. And as of right now, she's not talking to them, but I really do think some point in the future, she's going to let them come back into her life, and I'm scared, and I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know what that's going to entail. I don't know how much money they're going to make off of her from that, but I'm so scared it's going to happen in her future.
I think they would use her sons to do that, honestly, because like her sons have spoken out about their grandfather, and like there was a restraining order for a while because he had I can't remember if it was he hit, but there was some kind of physical thing with one of the sons, the oldest.
Yeah. Britney's dad put hands on him in some way, shape, or form, whether it is like taking a pillow and hitting him with the pillow. I don't know if he hit him. There was some form of hands.
But even still, her sons have been like, he was just looking out, for her. Like, it's her father. He loved her. So I really do think you're right. And I really do think that they would use her sons, because it also just seems like her sons have this very particular narrative because they were so young when everything happened.
They were fed the opposite of the truth. Yeah. I'm sure they were fed what Kevin wanted to tell them about their mom. They have feelings about their mom posting this and that on Instagram. There was a while where they weren't talking. I don't even know how close they are now, because those kids are pushed the narrative that Britney was a bad mom. She didn't care. She wanted to party, blah, blah, blah. She is crazy. Don't trust your mom. She's a little cuckoo right now, blah, 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 blah. And now that she's free, she's slutting it up in her skimpy little outfits. That's your mom. That's embarrassing. I'm sure they're being fed all sorts of fucking shit, which is awful, but that's what it is. And when you're a kid and you don't know any better and you can't do anything about it, and all the people you know and trust, all the adults in your life are telling you that, you're going to believe it.
Yeah. And like we said before, it really just seems like everyone that was taking her money had like a brunch. It was like, we're all on the same side, because Kevin's, I'm sure, telling him the same stuff as their grandparents, as his aunt, as his, uncle. Also, Brian's not mentioned in any of the books. I want to point that out. Like, Britney, mentions the ATV incident, but like in Lynn's book, he's mentioned a fraction. In Jamie Lynn's, don't think he's mentioned at all. Like, I'm just like, he's the Rob Kardashian of the family.
I know, he got away easy. I did want to talk about him a little bit, because Britney said when in their childhood, she was really, really close to him. And then when she kind of blew up into fame, they like kept tabs with each other, but they're living their own lives, right? Being in your like 20s or whatever, and he was older. And then when she was in her conservatorship and performing in Vegas at some point, he was on her payroll and he was working with her. And then after that, she's like, I lost tabs with him after that. And so he's been like, it seems like maybe he purposefully distanced himself from all of this. Is like, I'm just not going to be a part of that, which you can't blame him for that. But also, like, you just at the same time wish maybe he could have helped, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, I pulled up an OK Magazine article. So it seems involved in some way as well. He was part of the problem. It doesn't specifically go into how, but I honestly just kind of feel like all of the family was benefiting in one way or another. At one point, like, I believe the house that most of the family lives in, because Jamie Lynn, I think, was living with them. I don't know what her situation is now, but for a while, her husband had taken out a loan of like $50 million. That was like a lot more than she made. So I don't know if they were the whole family was living in the house. I don't know. It just seems like all of the family was okay with like benefiting.
Yeah.
And Brian was no different. And it's very tragic.
It's so sad, man. So sad. Well, damn, we dug in today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I feel like I'm sorry that you're going to have to go through and do all the things, but this has been a lovely conversation.
It has. No, it's been for the most part pretty free flowing. So in terms of editing, bitch, I ain't doing much. But this was a great free-flowing conversation. You had texted me the week that the book had first come out, because I was listening as well, and you were like, oh my God, we need to talk about this. I just finished it. That was for your first time finishing it. Now you're on listen number 3, but you were like, we need to talk about this book. And I was like, fuck yeah, you want to do it on the podcast. So thank you for agreeing to do this on the podcast, for spending a couple hours with me talking about Britney Spears and The Woman in Me and her book and her life. And I'm looking forward to her future, whatever that means, except for the part where she lets her family back into her life, because it's happening. I hate saying that, but like, I don't see it not happening.
Dude, I never thought that I would leave this book being like, it's on spite, or it is with spite, but it is on site with all of the members of her family, Justin Timberlake, Sam,
Yeah.
and Kevin. Maybe
Yeah.
their sons if I'm feeling it. You know, like all of you, y'all can catch these hands. They're rated for everyone.
Everyone. Oh my goodness. Man, oh man. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Why don't you go ahead, tell everyone where they can find you on your socials as well as your podcast.
Yeah, you can find me everywhere on social media at Tu Tia Bruja, and my podcast is Tu Tia Bruja, and you can find it everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yes, and just to end it off, because it felt weird not doing it in the beginning, we're gonna play the Breakfast Burrito Friday song. You know what it is. It's Breakfast Burrito Friday. Get your burrito. Get your breakfast burrito. It's Breakfast Burrito Friday. Get your breakfast burrito! It's Breakfast Burrito Friday! Bex, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone else who has been listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye!
Bye.